I'm sure you had a great time sipping coffee, eating lovely dishes, and of course, talking. And we'll be talking in our panel now, which is about artificial intelligence. And we'll find out what that is, whether it's good or bad. And the reason why I'm talking so slow is that there are still people coming in. So take any seat you like. And now let's watch a trailer together, what this is all about.
Shifting Powers, the Deutsche Welle Global Media Forum, your laboratory for the digital age. A powerful force, evolving at breathtaking speed, permeating nearly every aspect of life. Artificial intelligence. As microchips take charge of even the most advanced intellectual tasks, the media industry undergoes a rapid transformation. More and more workflows are being automated. Algorithms deliver tailor-made news for users. Speech assistants read aloud entire books, creating new forms of competition with the printed word. How will this affect the media? Join our discussion, the opportunities and challenges of artificial intelligence.
Yep, we have seen Sophia before 1 hour ago, live or almost live, what they call a scripted reality. And you cannot believe how relieved I am to be with real human beings now, that we can be talking about the good and the bad sides of artificial intelligence. Now, I have to admit, I am struggling with that phrase, artificial intelligence. Can intelligence be artificial? Or should we rather talk about machine intelligence? Especially if you think about what Jaron Lanier said before. He said, AI is nothing but statistical tricks. Well, if he is right, then AlphaGo and AlphaZero were pretty good tricks. For those of you who are not familiar with this, AlphaGo is actually a machine that learned to play Go, quite a complicated game, and beat one of the best players in South Korea 4 out of 5 times. That was 2 years ago. Last year, AlphaZero, which was developed by the same company, came around and, well, beat AlphaGo. So basically, the best players now are 2 artificial intelligent machines. Well, that must be a statistical trick if Mr. Lanier is correct. But it doesn't really matter how we label it. I think there is no doubt about when it comes to the media scene, there is a huge impact already, which can be felt for all of us once we discover content, when we engage with content, when we use content, and of course for those of us who are producing content, who are creating it. AI is already there and helps or maybe doesn't help. So for those of you who cry out, AI is doom, or AI is gloom. In a way, both of you are right. So these changes are there. And we're trying to get around these unreal expectations and maybe these misconceptions and try to navigate through this with our panel. And as a disclaimer, Deutsche Welle is using AI already. We're using HLT, human language technology. And that means we automate the transcription of videos. So instead of typing it out, a machine does it, and the quality is already pretty good. And we are using it as well for the semi-live subtitling of the GMF. And of course, that will relate to our next and first speaker, which is Edith Jung. She's already starting. So while she's starting, I'm explaining who she is. She gives us a short impulse speech. She's a venture capitalist, technology executive, so you label yourself, and China internet expert, has great expertise in and passion for technology trends in both US and in China. And most of all, for those of you, are any startup companies here? Raise your hands. Okay. So you must listen very carefully because she's investing in startups, especially in the field of blockchain, mobile, or, well, AI. So she gives her take now on AI. Please, Edith Young, give her a hand.
Hi guys, can you hear me? All right, Ido, I promise I will speak really, really fast, so we have more than enough time to really talk about AI with our fellow panelists. So let's get started with our deck. Really quick, my name is Edith. I actively invested in blockchain and AI-related companies, 50 plus now, both focused on Silicon Valley and China. And particularly for the China Internet Report that I created every year, is really about trying to explain China Internet in layman terms. You can go Google it completely free. In the next 12 minutes or so, I'm going to give you a quick overview, 10 minutes or so, think about how the state of AI and how it applied to Chinese media. And then also going to show you some really, really fun examples in terms of content creation and then also content curation. So two different areas. So with our fellow doctor in front, data is the new oil. I know it's a little bit old, but this particular conversation, which means make China super interesting. We're talking about over 700 million mobile internet users and smartphone users. That's basically 10 times the user base in Germany. Imagine when you have so much data, that means that a lot of really interesting things can be done in terms of machine learning and deep learning. And many of these tools are not tools that you and I are used to. Instead of Google, there's Baidu. Instead of Amazon, there's Alibaba. Instead of Facebook, which is completely blocked, is WeChat, which take care of payment, and Facebook and WhatsApp combined. So there's a lot of really interesting data that we can mine in China. And of course, China wants to be the #1 in AI by 2030. So now, let's go back to so there are a lot of data out there, but how do we actually think about AI being applied, particular focus on media? This particular graph, actually, I didn't draw it. It's actually come from a company called ByteDance. And for those of you who may or may not heard of it, it is the most valuable AI content discovery platform, so to speak, worth about 75 billion now, invested by SoftBank. So this particular graph actually come from them, and I'm going to drill into a little bit more details. Let's starting with content creation. So I wanted to introduce you to a few really interesting characters. This particular gentleman is called Zhang Zhao. Zhang Zhao, stated by the Chinese Xinhua news agency, is the world's very first AI news anchor. On the my right-hand side, is the real Zhang Zhao. He's a real person. So you see the right-hand side is his real person photo. On the left-hand side is generated by the computer. So they synthesize his voice, plus using animation, sort of to dub the way that he talks. And of course, most of the language that he reads is through NLP. So I'm going to quickly show you, by the way, he speaks in English. So let's try this.
Hello, everyone. I'm an English artificial intelligence anchor. This is my very first day in Xinhua News Agency. My voice and appearance are modeled on Zhang Zhao, a real anchor with Xinhua. The development of the media industry calls for continuous innovation.
Okay, we're going to stop there. So Zhang Zhao, so he, just by the way, he's only 7 months old, a little bit younger than Sophia, and his first day on the job was November 2018. So pretty new on the job. And a few months later, Xinhua and Sogu, which is a search engine in China, created a first female news anchor. And on the left-hand side is the real Xiaomin. On the right-hand side is computer-generated. So, and this time she's going to speak in Chinese.
现场的各位朋友，大家好，欢迎来到新华社。我是由新华社和搜狗公司联合培育的全球首个 AI 合成女主播。
All right, so we're going to stop there. So if you, I don't know how, I know you guys don't speak Chinese, but it's completely okay. But you can sort of sense that it's a little bit more smooth, like in terms of the way that she talks. I think, earlier we were talking to some of our fellow attendees. It is kind of scary. Is Chinese AI going to take over the West? Not really, because most of the data is in Chinese. So you would kind of see there's a difference between sort of the language is a lot more smoother in the Chinese language. All right. Next person I would like to introduce you to is Xiaoai or Xiaomin in Chinese. Is proudly researched and supported by Microsoft. Started in 2014, and now Xiaomin is in her 6th generation. And this particular, it started as a chatbot, mainly through text. And a lot of really lonely teenage boys treat her almost like a girlfriend. And in fact, she now have over 660 million users worldwide and have processed over 30 billion conversations. And in fact, she has different name in different countries. So in Japan and Indonesia, her name is Rina. And in the US, her name is Zoe. So you can have conversation with her on various different platforms, regardless it's Facebook Messenger or WeChat, on various different places. But what's really interesting to me now is not only through text. In fact, Xiaoai can speak, she can sing, she can have a complete conversation, and she also part-time, and that's what that particular image is about. She part-time in various different Chinese TV news stations and anchor what's happening with the weather. And according to Microsoft, they're going to have her own radio show and also her own brand of audio books, which is kind of crazy. All right, last person I'd like you to meet is not a real person. Again, it's another robot called Xiaomin. Xiaomin is a robotic reporter. And what's really amazing about him was during the 2016 Olympic, he basically created 450 pieces of content over 2 weeks, about 40 to 50 pieces of content per day, about 100 words, all in Chinese. Is a combination of using NLP sort of look through all the various different social conversation and combination of search through all the different images and develop a meta text to sort of have a stack ranking algo to compare which sentence is actually better for headlines and the content of the article itself. Since then, using the same engine, ByteDance have produced about 8,000 pieces of content. And during the sports event, all these articles come out within 2 minutes after the end of the game. And it's absolutely amazing. All right, so we talked about content creation, so let's go into curation. So, by the way, that's President Xi, and he probably will hate me, so don't say that. All right, ByteDance, as I mentioned earlier, is now the world #1 most valuable and popular AI-powered content discovery platform. I have not invested in them. I wish I did. But I'm going to quickly tell you a little bit about how they did it. So they started the company with just one app. And that app is called 今日头条, and it's translated today's headline. Right now, today's headline have over 240 million monthly active users. It is the #1 news aggregator app in China. So when we talk about aggregator, it means they actually search through identify, search, collect not only pieces of news, but also images, video, various to build up the whole repository of content. And then what they do, instead of, there's no such things that, of course you can use WeChat similar to how Facebook do Facebook Connect, but most of their users do not log in. So it's not they give up any sort of their own social demographic data, but they study the individual, learning through the way that they tap on their content, they swipe, how much time they spend, what time of the day that they're reading, and interact with all these data to build up the profile. The image I have here is exactly the same time, exactly in Beijing. If you open two apps, the same app at the same time, and you see a very different way of how they present content, including sort of on the top part, even like the categorization of content being presented, and the way that one is a little bit more image focused versus more video focused is super fascinating how well they have built 今日头条. And then they also really extended to build up using various different signals. So as I mentioned earlier, it's not only your own sort of demographic, but it's also like the type of content plus the context. So think about if I am sitting in, well, everybody is talking about Huawei these days, and probably what I'm seeing here versus I'm being in China, a completely different content can serve us up just because there is breaking news and plus different geography may see different things. So they extended this methodology not only to news, but what's really amazing, they also apply to something that's to two different apps. One is called Douyin. It's a short video app. And most of this video is user-generated content between 1 to 5 minutes. And then the US version of it is called TikTok. And both of them essentially is sort of the similar, but one is after China market, one's after non-China market. And this methodology have done really well for them. In 2017, they've generated over, okay, I can't really see that, but over 7 billion of revenue with 120 million daily active users, and that's only for one app. And now they have at least 3 of them, all over 200 million in MAU. And that's ByteDance, the screenshot of that, and 66% of them are all below 30 years old. As you see, TikTok, it overseas in 2018, first half, been downloaded over 100 million times, is the #1 on both iOS and Android. So I'm almost at 12 minutes. If you don't remember anything I talked about, there's only 3 main key takeaways I want you guys to remember with this particular presentation is, one, in the startup world, the most valuable company in the world, in terms of private company, which is ByteDance, 75 billion, happen to be a media company that empowered by AI. So it's super interesting that you think, maybe you can't make money off of media, but it's so interesting what they have done with AI and generate billions of revenue. And then as you think about AI and content, it's so interesting to see China have successfully built, you know, the Zhangzhao, Xiaomin, they really like the word Xiao means little. All these robots and being used over 600 million people. And then last but not least, also using AI for curation and moderation, which enhance advertising. So here are some of the faces of the fun bots and AI, faces of China AI. And I will share this particular presentation with all of you, and yes, sign up for my newsletter. I'll send it to you. Thank you so much, Ido. Right on time. Thanks.
Right on time. That's if human beings do time boxing, then 10 minutes can be 15. Please, no, take your seat, please. And I'm now asking my panelists to go on stage. We have here, drums up, Joachim Köhler. He's head of net media department at the Fraunhofer Institute for Intelligent Analysis and Information Systems and the technical director of the European AI for EU project. Thanks for that tongue breaker, by the way. And if you want a real tongue breaker, you have to have a Finn on your panel. Ate Jaskilainen, professor at the Finnish University of Technology in Lappeenranta, and as well an AI consultant specialized on media. And much more important, Finland won the ice hockey championship. And he is here. Sober or not, we'll find out. Nanjio Sambuli is the next senior policy manager at the World Wide Web Foundation, where she's an expert on issues of digital technologies and their impacts on governance, media, and society. And that's her applause. And now, Lillestrad, please come to us from Sweden, where she's head of content development at Mitt Media. And she says she has a passion for local journalism, whether it's made by humans or robots. And we'll dive into this in a second. Now, what Deutsche Welle does is we did send our reporters. Please, thank you. That makes it so much easier for us to be here. You know, we have little time, many people, so many things to talk about, so I'm trying to talk a little bit slower to not get too much into the flow. But still, first thing we do is we just listen to those people all over the world that Deutsche Welle has visited. We went around the globe and asked the question, what does AI mean to you? And this is a 2-minute answer.
I think that people just need to start thinking about how we'll respond, especially for our jobs.
We need to move forward. No, it's a very good idea, and it brings a lot of new technology and make things easier.
I'm not so sure that they can be very effective in gardening and growing and preparing food.
Tabii ki de şu anki teknoloji böyleyse ileri zamanlarda daha fazla özellikle robotlar çıkacaktır. Ama mutlaka insan elinin olduğu şeyler kalacaktır diye düşünüyorum.
Kötü bir şey olamaz, öyle bir şey. İstemem de öyle bir şey, asla ve asla.
When it comes to that aspect of brain, to just do simple things like common sense, the robot cannot perform something like that. So a robot can walk as human being can walk.
Der Roboter kann keinen Menschen ersetzen. Und ich habe ein bisschen Sorge, dass viele Leute das möchten oder dass sie die Gefahren, die damit verbunden sind, gar nicht sehen.
Ja, für meinen eigenen Beruf. Ich bin Politikwissenschaftler. Wahrscheinlich wird sich das in Grenzen halten. Ich denke, da wird die Robotik nicht so viel abnehmen können.
机器人是人类制造出来的啊，所以机器人再多，人类还是必须要的啊。就是人类会在更提升自己，自然不会被淘汰掉啊。
因为你机器人像我们老的是无所谓，那个年轻人影响他们的工作机会。
Нет, я абсолютно спокойна. Я уверена, что робот не вытеснит меня с моего места, потому что я профессиональный стилист. У них нет таких золотых ручек, как у меня.
All right. For a second, I thought it was the Lion King from Russia. Well, actually, I mean, the golden hands that the human beings have and the robots don't. I mean, obviously, the first question goes to you, Lee, because you are already operating a newsroom, which is what, just one computer? Because you're already in your local journalism team, you're using AI, and AI generates stories. How does that work?
Yes, we have been producing robot articles since 2016, and we publish them automatically.
And you've developed this together with United Robots, a Scandinavian company. So you were sitting together, the programmers and you said what you want, and then all of a sudden they program it, and all of a sudden perfect journalism comes out.
Perfect is, yeah, we can talk about that, but sometimes
yeah, well, let's talk about that, exactly.
Yes. Sometimes it's perfect, and sometimes it's difficult. But we have the editorial, we know the editorial thing, and they know the tech thing, so that's a good thing together.
And how do your users react to it? I mean, because if you say it's sometimes perfect and sometimes it isn't.
Yeah. Well, it's perfect. We have homeowners bot. We create one article for every house that is sold. That's quite easy. We know who's the seller and the buyer. And then we have a new company bot, and we write one article about every new company that is starting.
Sorry, Lee, and if you say we write,
yeah, the
bot writes.
Well, we write the angles, and
okay,
the bot writes the article.
You're feeding the machine, so to speak, with different angles?
We decide.
So it's basically, because everybody says automation is very easy. If it fits into a spreadsheet or a chart, then it can easily be automated. So that goes for AP, you know, there are many others out there who are using this already, but they do financial data, football results, that kind of stuff. But you're saying you're putting in different angles, and then...
Well, we collect the data in a big box, and then we...
But that's humans collecting the data.
What?
Human beings. I mean, these are people like us, made of flesh.
Well,
I mean, they are the ones collecting the data.
And the robot makes the analyze it, and then creates the article. But we make the rules. So
okay,
we are
for
deciding.
a second I was about to say that leaves me speechless. But it's because I thought it was the other way around, right? I mean, we do the analysis, we are the journalists, we give it this super special, very clear, sometimes opinionated, sometimes balanced view.
Yeah, but the math, the computer can do better, I think.
Okay, so we have
better
to
than
ask.
Me. Yeah.
It can do better when it comes to math. Now is the challenge. Do we ask the German engineer to talk about this? Or do we ask someone who said, well, I know math better than many others?
Let's start with it. Okay, as engineer, what should I say? Yeah, of course, what the machine can do very well is counting. So count words and do statistics. We heard this before, and that's the advantage of the machine, that this counting is very powerful and the math behind, and that's the algorithm, the scary algorithm, yeah, who's doing this, and sometimes this algorithm performs much better than humans. And I think in this area of journalism, robot journalism, for restricted domains, it worked pretty nice. But if you want to make an article about politics, about the election yesterday, well, I don't know if it works. Yeah. So, but for this sport news, I think it's already quite good.
Okay. Can I just point or play the ball, take the ball and play it to Ate? And by the way, we've all agreed to go by first names, not because we know each other for such a long time. Most of us have met just 1 hour ago, because we thought it was easier to keep the conversation going. But Ate and me, we go way back, a little bit longer, when he was still with YLE, the Finnish broadcaster. And the Finnish broadcaster has Voitto. And Voitto is an automated sports reporter.
An election reporter, yes. In English, you can call him Victory. Or Victor, actually.
Okay.
Victor in Finnish. I think it fits to this ice hockey kind of a situation in the world.
I'm sure he'll do this all the time. Whatever we talk about, he'll go back to ice hockey. But hey, that's being a world champion, that's all yours.
Yes, yes. Well, I think quite many of these robots that create stories are not very kind of complicated parts of the AI scheme. They are actually pretty simple. I think what you have done, some other companies also have done quite well, is that actually the stories are made in collaboration with a machine and a human. But the good thing in actually the real success with Voitto was that Voitto was created as with a kind of human face. So he
like Sophia?
Yes, in a way. Well, he's a much more kind of I would say more attractive. They even have a stuffed kind of a toy of him. And everybody wants to get photographed with him. And the guys who designed Voitto, this stuffed Voitto, designed a hand that can hold a can of beer or soft drink, so that he has all the kind of things.
Images about Finns with beer cans pop up into my face. Yep.
But anyway, saying all this, I would say that for me, the real question is how to solve the fundamental problems of journalism with the help of machines, and the answer is not creating more content. Because actually one of the problems of journalism is that there is too much content and people are drowning in content. So actually, therefore, the curation part and the secret why the Chinese company is so successful is that it's able to curate in the sensible way. And that's the more interesting part of AI, because that creates value. It kind of narrows your kind of a selection of stories in a sensible way. And if you can do that, then you are creating value. And that can work together with that kind of systems, because if a machine can create thousands and millions of stories, you only want to read those that are relevant for you. So you need both. You need the automated content creation, and then you need the curation. Otherwise, you are making the world kind of a worse place.
Let's quickly jump on that China example, because there is as many of you might know, Deutsche Welle our content is being censored in China, so it's not accessible. So my big question is, can AI help us here? Because the point that all of a sudden AI starts to curate, and I loved your picture there. So if the Chinese government, being represented by the picture that you have, starts to curate our content, would that make our content accessible?
Are you kidding me? There's no AI can fight the Chinese Great Firewall.
Would that not be a great case, something to develop, to look for, to finally make content accessible in China, something that we call freedom of expression and freedom of speech?
And yeah, no, I was just going to jump in there and say I have to be the Debbie Downer, but with a smile, by saying, if anything, what some of the risks that come up to the question here is actually more content filtering, depending on the whims of whoever has power to assert directly or indirectly some sort of control on what should be seen or not seen. So that could apply right from content creation and to curation, and that's something to very much keep in mind as we think about all the exciting opportunities. There are very real risks that will come with that. I mean, and back to what Ate was saying about content and too much content, I think it's really about qualifying relevance of content. You can produce a lot about what. So I think a good example here is, let's say, Brexit. Brexit is one of those events where there's so much information and very few of us are actually informed of what is going on. So sure, maybe you can feed that election results or anything else into an algorithmic process and it'll churn out the what information, but we do need the work of journalism to move further upstream, if you will, with explaining, providing context, linking these things for it to make sense. Because I think as a reader, I'm just trying to make sense of the events. And that is where the developments of AI are pushing the work of journalism in two ways. The journalism industry itself and how it will organize, but also how AI in itself, and much broadly, how technology and technological developments are covered by journalists.
Right. So, Lee, does this fit to your experience? I mean, is this the way, I mean, could your AI that you are using write this analysis, or finally not? I'm still trying to understand.
I'm not sure if I understand it.
Well, then it's probably I need to repeat then. How independent is your software? I mean, how much of a journalist's job that Nanjira was just describing is so important to balance things out, get different views in, and how much of this can be done by what you are using and have developed together with programmers?
Well, our robots can't do that, and we don't want them to do that. We want them to do the job that the journalists don't need to do or shouldn't do, because the data can do it, the computer. So we are happy with our robots and think that's fine. They have a mission where they are really super local, but the journalist needs to do the unique content. So
you want them to take the pain points away for the human journalist?
No.
But I would say that the AI also gives good opportunities for journalists in being better in detecting the context or being better in being creative. So I think the real value in content creation is in the collaboration between humans and machines. And to be honest, at least when I was working as a journalist, I wasn't every day in the full shape. I wasn't thinking. Perhaps I was.
Thank you.
Sometimes drinking, but
finally, let's tweet that. That's fine, you know.
The day after, I was not in the best shape. But the kind of we are sometimes lazy. We are not always thinking very brightly. And actually, the machines are not lazy. They are able to provide new ideas. They are monitoring the world in the way that humans are not able to do that. So, kind of mixing those capabilities of humans and machines, actually, the journalism can be better.
Is this what you meant when I asked all of you to describe in advance what AI means to you? And you said AI is a great opportunity to make journalism more relevant, the humankind more clever, and the world a better place. And there cannot be a bolder statement than this one. Is this because you are an AI consultant?
Well, that's actually that's a topic I wrote a book and that was published in February. And basically, I think that we have an ethical responsibility of correcting the mistakes of humankind. And we can't do that without technology, because we have used technology to spoil the planet. So we need this collaboration with technology. And if we kind of deny the opportunity of working together with machines in then we are actually not acting ethically. Of course, there are challenges, there are downsides in using AI, and you have to be very kind of careful how to use it and how not to use it. But I think we have to underline that doing good is an ethical responsibility as well. So don't stop doing good just because you are afraid of making mistakes.
Yeah, I think everybody would give you a hand on that one. Now, when it comes to AI, we need a lot of data to make these machines as smart as they can. I could say now, which leads us again to China, because they seem to be collecting a lot of data from all over the world. So is China then the best country to start with AI, because they have all the data that they need to get? Or at least they know how to get it?
I think just to start with, Chinese government is definitely very supportive of the whole AI industry.
That's a nice phrase. Huawei, yes, thank you.
Started with the BAT, Baidu, Alibaba, Tencent, and which obviously they've been around for a long time. And almost I know like many of them hate me saying that, but the fact is the Chinese government is quite proud and sometimes calls some of these companies as a national AI team. So I think, we had that conversation, when we were sitting there. I think it's very interesting sometimes, like in Germany and some of your work, which is working with enterprise, very specific set of data. I do find that, in China, Tencent and Alibaba both actively invest in AI companies. And once they invest, a lot of times that, yes, you do get access to some of their data, regardless it's e-commerce data, search data, conversational type data is very, very useful when you're trying to build an AI company.
Okay, Joachim.
Yeah, sure. But I mean, in Europe, and not only in Germany, in Europe, we have also so much data around. We have to organize the data in a better way, and especially also in the media area. So we have a lot of research projects, also with media organizations, also with Deutsche Welle. And so you have so much content and so much data. I mean, I think the media industry can be one of the key enabler of AI, because the media has so much data. We heard this before, and so we have to find to use it, also to use it under European law, GDPR is the word, and so that's a chance. I don't agree that China is very strong with personal data, of course, but we have so much data here in Europe. Let's use it, and let's make good AI technology, and we can do it.
Well, yeah, great. The thing is also, what kind of data do you have? The biases in any data set have to be addressed, and that's something that has to be front and center. And in these conversations, especially with all these so-called frontier technologies, we really have to make sure, and really I must beseech journalists here in how you cover it, in how you use it, to place front and center the risks and challenges, just as we do the opportunities, because there tends to be a lot of solutionism. AI is the next big thing. Every newsroom run off and go ye forth and invest in AI, and forgetting that they're very real things that need to be addressed. So the problem may yet not be data, but there is the problem of what kind of data is being fed into the systems, what biases existed in how that data was collected, how it was put together, and how it's going to be churned into a system to give us some insights. So it may be missing particular people's perspectives, but it's supposed to inform outcomes or decisions for policymakers or anyone else. That is one particular example that has to be placed front and center, and we must not wait till we make mistakes, because right now those mistakes might be a bit too costly. We could really end up in really, what else? let me not even say what I'm thinking about it, but like...
Oh, please, please.
It's pure dystopia with a smile. We are literally at a very, like at the nice edge of society, not to make it sound like I'm making some alarm bells, but it is a reality. And so with all technologies and how we talk about them, it might be blockchain next year when we come back or whatever else. Front and center, start thinking about those risks, those challenges, those biases that have not been spoken to yet in the instruments we're feeding into these machines.
So basically you're saying, first of all, there needs to be a certain critical approach by us as journalists by writing about and informing about AI, which is level number one. And we fail doing this so far by doing funny interviews with Sophia's.
Yeah, I mean, Sophia is great, guys, but... For reals. It's the mesmerization of technology that I think journalists do need to get over. It's also the private sector lens. It's a bit of a hypnosis that then has a lot of what is content put out there, churned out just to really regurgitate what they have sold as a promise. That too often, the very real impacts, societal impacts, environmental impacts as well, are being written about as afterthoughts. And oftentimes, it's not the first thing I will read from a journalist. And I think there are already studies showing that, particularly on the topic of AI, the journalism industry is failing society in keeping them informed because it's a bit too much about the hype and not enough about balancing that narrative with what are the real challenges and risks.
Yep, point taken, absolutely. And what about data which is being collected not only by Chinese companies, but by the FANGs, Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, Google, FANG. So they collect tons of data. It might be the wrong data, but still they are not super transparent about it, and they seem to be creating something out of it. Revenues for sure, but maybe some algorithms that we don't understand yet. And the question is, how much of the bias by the programmers, these funny white guys that sometimes are sitting there with their prejudices and their ideas, they are programming something, and that might lead to software taking decisions.
Oh, it already is. We're already seeing that with very detrimental impacts. And so in the year of our Lord 2019, this very 27th May, if there's anybody here today who still believes that tech is a silver bullet, you really need to rejig your thinking, because that is how we have ended up in situations where the culture that then perpetuated tech developments, move fast and break things, has broken societies.
I'm smiling because Joachim, you should see his face. I think he was about to jump in and say, well, listen, I'm an engineer. I always have a silver bullet and a gun here.
No. I think I see it a little bit from the European perspective on AI development. And so in Europe, we started this initiative. I don't know if you heard about this. There's a high-level expert group installed with 50 AI expert all over Europe, also from the ethical area. And I think that's really a key, and which makes Europe a little bit unique in the world in AI, to make rules, to define processes, or what you said, bias, data, and so on. And I think here we have to follow that. That's a new chance, and this will be also important that AI is accepted, especially if you want to make decisions on AI, especially autonomous driving. You have to make the decision for some movement of the car. And then it's very important that you understand what's going on, and that's not only this black box with some neural network in it. And this is, I think, what we should, and also journalists should talk about and are informed about this ethical issues. And as engineer again, so we are very motivated to follow these ethical issues, also to provide an AI technology for the society, not only just getting some data from Facebook and co. and doing something.
May I, however, note that actually this focus on ethical problems of AI has actually made us to think about issues that seem to be pretty normal when made by humans. So, for example, the gender bias issues made by AI, they have been scandals. The same decisions made by humans have been completely normal.
You're referring to people who have applied for a job and were not being invited to the interview based on the algorithm that had sort of kicked them out already.
And the good thing with AI bias is that we only need one German engineer to solve that. But to solve the human bias, we need the whole mankind. even the Chinese and the US and wherever, I mean, the whole population.
Oh, okay,
well,
Edith wants to get in and say, take a Chinese programmer next to the German engineer.
Well, what you just said remind me of, I don't know if you guys play with the Google image search, which is an app, and every time I took a photo of myself, it always thinks that I'm some Japanese, painting, because they apparently don't have enough Chinese people to train their image algo.
They told me I was Dolph Lundgren. You know what that feels.
So imagine, I think, as we talked about, it's only as good at whoever is building it. That gender bias, cultural bias, ethic is really a matter of, trying to put different perspective, as you're building all these algo, right?
It's both who is building and what kind of data you have, like in this case. But turning this issue into the context of journalism, I think there's also a very good possibility for journalists to use AI as a mirror for their own biases, because very many biases are unconscious, so that actually you don't see them in your own actions. But looking at the data, letting the computer analyze the data compared to other data sets actually may give you feedback which you wouldn't get. I know that in Finnish broadcasting company, which I'm not working anymore, but since I left, they have created an automated feedback bot for the journalists, so that actually journalists get, based on numbers, feedback what they have done and how kind of successful they have been, according, of course, to certain targets.
But basically you're saying transparency is an issue for journalism, whether being done by artificial machines or by human beings. I mean, you have to be transparent about your sources, and going to Google as a human being, doing a search, and then implementing this into your article and not telling about your sources is bad journalism, and whether that's been conducted by a machine or not. Is that part of the point?
That's part of the point, but I would also say that if you look at this from a European perspective, you can be sure that Google and Facebook and those American giants are operating in this field, investing billions in this. China is very strong in this. What is Europe doing? And if Europeans are building systems, then the questions of AI ethics are based on, well, perhaps values that we could share more easily than, for example, with those created with the Silicon Valley values or perhaps some authoritarian values. So actually I think that from the ethical point of view, for European, both countries, media companies, building systems based on the values we share is of strategic importance, because otherwise somebody else will do that.
Just wanted to jump in there and say it would be remiss to have that conversation and not mention that the other regions, Africa, Latin America, other parts of Asia, are also players in this game, and more often than not are sites of experimentation, and not necessarily sites that are being looked at in these conversations about how these technologies are being developed or deployed in those contexts. So we must be very careful in how we talk about it, how we cover this topic, and also how we implement it, AI or any other technology in various parts of the world, to remember that there are people there who are experts of their own lived experiences, that there shouldn't be any type of imposition, because with all these conversations, of course, there are the undertones of geopolitics that are going to shape how each of this affects journalism or any other industry. And so it's always important to keep that in mind.
And the hope is that, absolutely, please. And the hope is that the discussion and debate about AI or the use of AI will sort of trigger a certain new interest into something that should have been dealt with before.
I'll jump in there and say, I think, as Ate was saying, rightfully so, this is one particular technology in more so than previous waves, where indeed it is a mirror of society, and in truth, we're not liking what we're seeing. So we are having to confront a lot more of the unresolved geopolitics or other biases that is a very important moment, and that's where, again, the work of journalists is getting a new winds beneath the sails to really contextualize these conversations. I'm none the wiser when you tell me the latest in I don't know what great stuff that's happening in China, but there are very interesting undertones to what kinds of societies are then, being generated through that. That aspect of the conversation is just as important as what's the latest startup and what has it done. So that's where, again, we really do need journalists to step in there and contextualize all these developments. A lot of it, unfortunately, does mean learning and unlearning the work of, writing, thinking, analyzing. But that's what society right now needs. Also in an age where I must mention, one big risk, I know false news or fake news has often come up. AI is already turbocharging what is being called deep fakes. So you will have seen a story, for instance, of a false video generated from images of Nancy Pelosi, for instance, the U.S. congressperson. And, that could have serious implications. So there's a phone now, I can't remember which one, or maybe I shouldn't mention. With one picture, I'm able to create a whole series of the movements of your face, add some voice in there, and I could put out something that says, we're starting a new issue, and then it triggers stock market crashes and that kind of thing. So that's going to be a huge risk. And I think where journalism and the media industry will step in is really still maintaining that credibility, so that if I see that on my phone, it's been sent via my app. If I come to your brand news organization to seek some respite and to understand, that is really going to be, this is a really interesting moment to start resolving what the role of media in a world where anyone can create content, and people are having more tools that will create very scary content to skew the conversations. That's where the work and the integrity of this industry is going to be so paramount.
Which leads, for example, to one of the bizarre situations where Deutsche Welle is doing research projects, AI research projects, to detect deep fakes that were produced by AI. So again, we have like AI fighting each other for the good or for the bad, and that in itself is, even for a German engineer, strange, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's an interesting battle now of AI, so creating fake videos and also to detect it. But of course, there are also technical solutions to detect this faked videos, and that's possible now. But of course, both sides develop these tools, and at the end, there's this competition: who is faster?
Lee, if I may, there's one thing that sort of bugs me all the time and concerns me in a way. It seems to me that we are using AI sometimes, and then we say, well, need to be transparent about it. But if not, it is in a way creating a filter bubble in itself. Because we're using AI, AI tells us these are your preferences, this is what you were looking for, this is what you want. So this is not different from the current filter bubbles that we've debated about, to say, well, this is really bad because otherwise we're not getting access to different information. Now, you are using this, and you said in a very fine way that it's sometimes perfect and sometimes it isn't, which sounded pretty human.
You heard that.
To me. Your AI products. Now, can you explain to us, because we're talking about transparency, how transparent are you? If I come to your site, how openly do you portray or present AI content and make it very clear, distincted from humanly produced content?
We think it's very important to be open with it, so we have this byline, MIT Media's text robot, in every article that it's writing. So I really don't understand why we need to create these humans, as we saw in China. Why do we fake human? Let them be a human. Let them be a robot. Do you understand what
Yeah. Well, so I think on that sense, what you were saying earlier about context and value, in many cases, I think what happened, at least in the US, there's certain social contract being broken. And there's a lot of trust being broken between most of the users with Facebook, particularly right now. But what's interesting is that China don't necessarily have that. They have many other problems. But in terms of that whole trust and social contract between most of these companies are actually completely okay to tell everybody this is generated by robots.
So why does it look like a human then? As we saw, I don't know the name of the man, but
oh yeah, of course. Like they tell everybody model like a real person so that they can use his voice, and maybe and at least give them the impression that I don't have to pay for benefits, nor that he doesn't need to sleep 24/7. He still pretend he's working.
Right. The question is, if Ate would have programmed an algorithm on ice hockey, the result would be Finland would be the world champion, because he would put all his prejudice and all his bias into this, knowing that Finland is the best team. Now, the last round, I would like to open this up. We need to be very short, crisp, and clear, and very precise, and that means we open the floor to you. Which are the questions that we have not touched in 1 hour? We tried to solve the world's problem. We almost got there. At least we did raise and rearrange some of the questions out there. So we need some microphones. So maybe you are the first hand to fly up. So please, and introduce yourself and be so kind to get up so everybody can see you. Thank you.
Thank you so much indeed. My name is Kingsley Uranta. I work for Channels Television, Lagos, Nigeria. I am a media trainer. And when our lady on my left was talking about the ability of journalists to rise up to this new challenge, I got myself thinking. Because the AI and the social media and the new things happening in several platforms have posed a lot of challenge to journalists. Yeah, you may have your data, but how do you interpret that data in such a way that it affects a lot of people across the spectrum? So my question is, shouldn't we be thinking of how to re-equip journalists in such a way that they can understand the situation and the data and all of that? Shouldn't we be thinking of looking at new modules to train journalists rather than still staying with the analog modules that we're used to over the years? I'm so interested because I happen to run the Channels Academy, which targets journalists and young journalists to train them on how to do things differently. Because we can sit here and talk about new ways of doing things. If you put a new wine in a new, an old bottle, I wonder what the result would be. But we have to equip journalists.
Yeah.
Thank you so
All
much.
right. No, I guess your point. I mean, the point of training, and Deutsche Welle has its DW Academy, and we're very much into trying to understand what are the new challenges arising everywhere in the media landscape, and how do we tackle these. So we run across similar ideas there, and the question is, what is the correct training? Do we just need to bring, like the media example, bring programmers and journalists together? The moment they start talking to each other, all of a sudden they start understanding each other, which is something we learn in our research projects.
I mean, I have to say, Deutsche Welle in Fraunhofer did a nice research project a few years ago, Newsstream. So
we did not rehearse that, okay.
Yeah, so where we did this exactly. So with data scientists, we did training, and so hackathons can help, yeah, to practice all these things. And this is one facet of this training, but you have to apply this. And yeah, I think that's to work together with data scientists in the news area is very helpful.
Ate is ready to step in.
Yes, when I started as a news director of Wiley by integrating the newsrooms of television and radio, and we were kind of quite forward running in that process, one of the key learnings was that people got kind of frustrated if everybody was posed with a demand of doing everything. Kind of you can't do everything in this new world. You have to have new experts taking care of very specialized jobs. So actually on the organizational level, you have to educate people into very, very demanding jobs, which and then help the people to work together as teams and create amazing things. That's my first point. Second point is that actually AI helps people to do much more complicated tasks with less education if the system is designed well, because the machine is helping you. So actually one approach is that people are able to kind of more demanding tasks.
Nigeria disagrees.
Yeah, respectfully so. I mean, to answer that question and try to point the disagreement, the skills that were most needed are age-old, what you're calling analog, critical thinking, creativity. That is stuff in any industry right now that is tackling this whole idea of new developments, new technologies is struggling with. The problem is the systems we have of educating people have been churning out machines, and now we are churning out machines, replacing the machines we've churned out in people. So it's really about going back to whether any system I go through, any information, if you leave this panel discussion having unlocked a new kind of thinking, that is fundamentally the idea and the purpose of any training any one of you will do.
Absolutely. And if we have reached that, it would be a perfect panel result already. But there is one hand which flew up as well, and there it is again. You have a microphone. Yes, please.
Malavika from the Digital Asia Hub and Harvard University. When we talk about things like polarization, which are fueled by AI, replicating and personalizing so that people get to see more of what they already agree with when it comes to news, you know, the echo chambers and filter bubbles. What are the financial incentives for giving people things they don't agree with, are not interested in? How would you change those financial models and incentives in journalism?
Build more tech.
Well, there are organizations that have a financial model that are not directly tied to the kind of success in the market. I know that, for example, BBC is talking about something called public service algorithm, which means that they have other objectives than those that bring in the money. So actually they are mixing other objectives. But they have to have the audience, and that means that they have to balance, that you have to be interesting, and you have to have the audience, and you have to have the retention, and then they add some salad, which is, okay, this is new, this is another angle. And actually, I have heard about private news organizations that are actually doing this same thing. So they are actually, they are designing algorithms that pick topics on the edges of your interest area, detected interest areas. So it's all about how you do the math, but it's possible. It's technically, it's totally possible to propose you something. You just replace the plus with minus. That's, I can do that amount of math.
And if you want to dig deeper into that answer, we'll save that for the break, which will be...
Yeah, please. My question is the same line with Anita.
Oh, you know each other?
No, we don't, but
okay.
Her angle and my angle is same, but my question is a bit different. Okay, what's happening is that AI does that personalization, and we are already into AI. And I want to give an example of YouTube. And I have two nieces, 4 years old and 3 years old. I try to filter what they see in YouTube. But each time I give them maybe Peppa Pig or some other things, even 2 years old kid, eventually the kid gets some suggestions which has totally pointless blabbering of, you know, some people playing with the toys and some people are unboxing. And I have tried really, really hard to, you know, make new login, and so that I try to filter that. But eventually, if I am left with his own devices, AI is dumbing him down. And also the rise of populism, like we have seen that around 600 million people, content is filtered to what they're looking for. And the AI will delve into its arcane feelings. So what we see as populism, AI has brought us here, and what is going to do about that?
Okay.
I can answer. I think we have a responsibility here. We can create those bubbles. We can give them the information that we want them to see as well. So we need to give them the content that they want, but we have our responsibility to give them more. So we decide. Everyone here is deciding. We will not let everyone else to decide, not the tech. The journalists should decide, I should say.
Thank you, Lee. And right now we have Oh, a final question from here. He's hiding behind the camera, so not the best spot for the other cameras to pick him up. So maybe you just come a little bit closer, so it's easier for all of you.
Strategically.
Yeah, I know. Hiding behind the camera is a soft spot.
I'm Shahidul Alam, a photographer, and I'd like to bring it to that thing. I mean, photography has always been associated with veracity. It's what you believe because you see it. But Louis Hine in 1909 had said, while photographs may not lie, liars may take photographs. And liars are presidents, liars are advertisers, liars are religious leaders. So there have always been people who've lied using photography or whatever else. The reason we're able to overcome it, it has nothing to do with technology. I mean, Photoshop is new, but photographs have lied throughout history. It's people who have built their credibility. Over a long period of time, you build your track record, you build trust, and thereby you become a trusted source. That applies regardless of the technology. So why do we not come back to the very tools that give us who we are as journalists? We are credible because of what we've done over a period of time.
Absolutely.
And that was not a question, but it was a very bold statement at the end. Thank you.
I don't know how much time we have, or do you want us to just...
No, you can, of course, you can wrap.
No, absolutely. And there isn't any technology that will per se be coded to perfect that. So whatever, here's the risk that I think is posed to this industry. With every tech wave, you're told to jump on it, adopt on it. And many times along that way, your credibility is being squandered to try and keep up with the hamster wheel, if you will. But there isn't going to be any technology that perfects credibility, trust, veracity, and all of that. So you have to keep remembering that. Else, we're going to... That's the last currency, I think, of society to keep us cohesive. And if we squander it, I guess it's each one of us for themselves.
The last currency of society, the last sentence of this panel. So, thank you all very much for coming. Most of all, thanks to Nanjira, Joachim, Ate, Lee, and of course to Edith. Give them, please, a warm applause. And for those of you who feel so much at home here in the plenary, why don't you come back at 7 for the Freedom of Speech Award, which we will be giving out here at 7 o'clock, right? 7 o'clock, all here. Thank you so much for coming, and please see us if you have any other questions that we did not touch upon. Thank you.